This is the speech I downloaded for the internet. So first of all, I'm very grateful to have been invited to give this opening speech. I want to make this a memorable day for our graduates. And so I'd like all our graduates, actually everybody, to take a moment right now to actually close your eyes and think of what it is about today that you're going to remember for the rest of your lives. So really just take a moment. When you're done, I'll continue. And I do have my speech downloaded. Just what it is about today that you're always going to remember. Okay, so this really is the speech I downloaded from the internet. So it says, begin very seriously. Follow with a facetious or ironic joke that confuses the audience. Break the tension by telling a long personal story that subtly imparts life lessons and advice for the graduates, but only if they listen carefully. If you've given a commencement speech before, simply reuse the previous story. Make the lessons and advice from this story explicit for everyone else in the audience who wasn't paying attention. Then challenge the graduates with an assignment, even though nobody ever gives an assignment during a graduation speech. To be fair, say how you will complete the assignment and how you will be accountable to them. Use a prop to announce a surprise, then end with an awkward silence, punctuated by some nervous laughter. If the speech bombs, just blame graduationspeeches.com and just say whatever. I've been at 2 graduations myself. The first time was in Berkeley. We do have an undergrad here, so this is appropriate. It was at a time in my life where I just made kind of a very important decision. So a month before, I was faced with the task of, I had one job offer. Interviewed lots of places, got the one job offer. I wasn't very excited about the job, but it was the only one I had. And I thought, okay, should I take this job that I don't really like, but maybe it's cool? Or should I keep on trying for a new job? And I decided, whatever it was, I was going to do the riskier thing. And I wasn't sure if it was riskier to take this job that I wasn't sure about, or to just keep on looking for a job. So then I decided, well, the riskiest thing is probably to invent my own third option. So I invented my own option, which is not take a job and just go traveling. So after graduation, I had some savings from lucrative summer jobs in the past, and I bought a one-way ticket to Europe, and I traveled around Europe, mostly buses, stayed in hostels, met a lot of people. The more people I met, the more they told me about the places that they had traveled to, and the more I wanted to travel myself. So my original plan was to go to Europe for 3 months, and based on a book that I had read a couple months before, I was really inspired to go to Australia. So I was originally going to go just to Europe for a couple months and Australia for a couple months. And so as I was traveling, kind of things happened, and I spent 8.5 months traveling around Europe. So I went from France, Spain, Portugal, Italy, Switzerland, Austria, Germany, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Finland, Estonia, Poland, Russia, Slovakia, Czech Republic, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, Turkey, England, Wales, Ireland, Scotland. And then I bought a ticket to Australia. So I traveled around Australia for 5 months just on buses and hitchhiked in cars. And I was up in Crocodile Dundee country in Darwin, in the north of the country. And I was looking for another car that I could kind of get a ride with down the west coast of Perth. But instead, at one of these hostels that I was staying at, I saw a notice that said, crew wanted to Singapore. So I emailed the guy, met him down at the marina, and sailed on a 33-foot sailing yacht for first 10 days from Australia to Bali in Indonesia, and then 11 more days on to Singapore. Once I was there, traveled around Malaysia and Thailand, and then I got inspired to go climb Mount Everest. So I flew to Nepal, and I trekked to the base camp of Mount Everest, and I was at the base camp, and I took a couple more steps up the mountain. So I climbed it, but not all the way to the top. And I went around India for 3 months. So 3 months in India cost $900. That was part of how I was able to pay for my trip, was by traveling really cheaply, spending nights on trains and buses. I went back to Thailand, went back to Australia, finished, actually went to the same hostel, found a notice for somebody who was advertising for a car ride down the west coast of Perth. Finished Australia, went to New Zealand, and then came back home for a family wedding. I'd been gone for 23 months. And it was, people, I had only planned to be gone for actually 6 months, 3 months in Europe, 3 months in Australia. I was gone for 23 months. And there were all these people at home kind of saying, what are you doing? When are you going to come home? When aren't you going to get a job? The economy is going down, so you should probably get it. That's what my mom was saying. She was kind of maybe being the voice of reason, but I ignored it. I just kept on doing what I wanted to be doing at that time, which was traveling. What I decided I was doing, because I didn't have enough money for the whole time, I ended up borrowing, and I said, 22-year-old Eric is borrowing from 26-year-old Eric. Turned out, maybe 22-year-old Eric was borrowing from 36-year-old Eric. But actually, so what I was really doing at the time was I was investing in myself. I was investing time and personal savings and future earnings to be doing what I really wanted to be doing. I came back to the States, and so that was just my first world travels. I ended up living in a tent for 8 months in the backyard. It was not an occupied, but I was occupying the backyard of my sister's house for 8 months. And then I read some more books, got inspired to travel other places. So I traveled around North America, then Central and South America. Came back to the States, and at this time, I was 25, I was unemployed, was living in my parents' house in Modesto, California, where I grew up. And it seemed like, what had I done with my life? A lot of people, what have you, you're 25, you haven't even started a real job, what's going on? True. And so I decided to travel again. I went to Africa for 6 months, but before I went to Africa, I applied to graduate schools in statistics. Because other people, I thought, probably if I'm 25, 26, if I start a PhD program when I'm 26, I'm going to be past 30 after, probably going to be too old. But fortunately, I had learned this one lesson while traveling that was in Peru. I was hiking the Inca Trail, and I was climbing up a very steep mountain, and I got to the top where there was this forest, all shrouded in mist, these really old, knobular trees that kind of were hanging with moss. And I was just waiting for my two friends that I met on the bus who were trekking with me to come up the hill. And I was struck with this inspiration that I'm never going to be too old for anything. And so it was part inspiration, part just well, what it really was, when I think about it, was actually a decision. At that time, I decided that I'm never going to be too old for anything. So I'm not going to use age as an excuse. I think that really opened the door for me as an older, 26 is not old, but to go back to graduate school, to start a new career. So I decided that I'm not going to let age be an excuse for me not to do the things I want to do. So before my final travels, I decided, okay, I'm going to apply to grad schools. I did. I traveled around Africa for 6 months, and then in Africa, I actually decided which graduate school that I would attend Duke. Came back when I was a regular grad student for 6 years, then became a professor here. So if you weren't paying attention, I'm trying to ask you to invest in yourself. So really now I'm going to challenge you for the next 6 months. So you guys have already started this investment. Master's students, you've spent a year and a half, a lot of money, to get a master's degree in statistics from Virginia Tech. Wandy, PhD, been here for 5+ years. Even Stephen, it's 3.5 years. It's a big chunk of investment. You guys are investing in yourself. Continue that investment. So I want you, all of you, graduates, to, in 6 months, I guess June 16th, 2012, tell me how you have continued your investment in yourself. But to be fair, I thought, well, what is it that I could do to invest in myself? And I thought of 2 things. So what I'm going to do for the next 6 months is I'm going to continue my habit. For the past month, I've started this habit of working at least 1 hour a day on the paper closest to publication. Because for me, as an academic, the academic papers that I write are kind of my currency, and it's what helps me in my job. So I'm going to help myself by finding the time, at least 1 hour every day, to work on the paper that's closest to publication. And second, you guys only have to do one thing. I'm going to do 2 things. Is I'm going to write up my travels. Because I spent 5 years actually traveling around the world. And at the time, I kind of thought, well, basically, I want to get a PhD in traveling, so that means I need to write a dissertation. Somehow, I'm going to write my dissertation in traveling. And I'm going to start with a blog. It's travelingstatistician.wordpress.com. I have, I think, 12 volumes of my personal journals, travel journals that my aunt is actually now transcribing. So I'm going to use those. I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe give me some advice of what you'd like to hear, but I'll maybe reflect on those travels and figure out how it is that my traveling and my statistics have merged. But for some of you, I'm trying to create the position of the traveling statistician. So we're starting with the on-the-ground statistician. I'm not going to get into that, but this past summer, okay, I'll get into it a little. This past summer, I and one of our graduate students here at Virginia Tech spent the summer in Mozambique as an on-the-ground statistician. His job was to help in the data collection for this project that was investigating how Mozambican villagers use water. We're trying to figure out the impact of this water investment in rural Mozambique. And so we're inventing this position of the on-the-ground statistician to really add value to data-intensive projects by having a statistician in the field making statistical decisions in the field and cleaning the data and making sure that the data are as best they can. So those are the two things. That's work at least an hour a day on a paper closest to publication, and starting a blog about my previous travels. Yeah, it's the awkward silence stuff. And then the prop. So the first time that I was a graduate was at Berkeley. The second time was a few years ago at Duke, and Oprah Winfrey was the commencement speaker. So this was her second and final time, she announced, to be a commencement speaker. She's only spoken at 2 graduations. The first was at Stanford in 2008 for her niece. The next one was 2009 for her nephew, who was a Duke graduate. So at the Stanford graduation, after she was done, she asked the graduates to look under the chair, and she had given everybody a book. For the Duke graduation, she didn't do that. I kind of felt a little bit robbed by Oprah. So I'm going to give you, graduates, a book. You can come up after this whole ceremony. I have several from my bookshelf. These are books that I've loved and read and have inspired me. So give you each an individualized book after the rest of this.